as soon as they came back, they handed Mom the money. You didn't know that. And we weren't broken. We were not broken.
Explain that.
We were victims. We were not broken. We look at those going through things like that, and we get labeled with this term as if you are broken, and we lived it.
You're going to have to take the next question because I
cannot get out of my mind.
Right.
Right?
Even till this day.
Even till this day. It's part of my ongoing nightmare.
Right.
Welcome to the Paul Larry Show, where real stories unfold like a movie. This isn't just a podcast. This is an experience. Imagine curling up with your favorite book, getting lost in a story, or taking a long drive with a voice that pulls you in. This is what we do here. We take the stories of everyday people, the struggles, the triumphs, the moments that shape us, and we bring them to life. So sit back, get comfortable, and let's go on this journey together. Because every story has a heartbeat, and you're about to hear it.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome husband, father, president of a local nonprofit, successful organization, live in a very nice community. All of this to say, you started digging up the past and bringing up old stuff that we've hid and buried when everything is going so well. Why?
There's just so many people that have been in my life, really close friends actually, that have known us for years, that do not truly know me. They don't know my whole story.
Wow.
And I think that for me, it's always gnawed at the back of my mind because of a simple word, acceptance, right? I'm accepted for who I've put in front of people,
Presented.
but should they truly know me,
Where you've been.
the totality of me, right?
Wow.
And of us, and of all of us, right?
Wow.
Because you're an extension of who I am.
Does that sometimes make you feel like an imposter sometimes?
Oh yeah, that and living a lie.
Really?
You know, I love truth. Yeah, I think you know me.
Yeah.
Right.
We were discussing this offline.
Yeah. Even to the point where it is uncomfortable for others,
Right.
I pursue truth, and this is the one area that I have kept locked up in boxes,
Right.
shoved on a shelf, and the only people that knew the true extent of our life really was Tanique, my wife.
Yeah.
And then a couple close,
Very, very close.
very close.
Very
Like, but and that's why when we get together, we could joke.
Right. And to understand that, like today, the person sitting in front of me right now, Joel, who is Joel Ramjan?
I love people.
Yeah.
Love people. Love my wife. Love my children. Love my dog. But I would give everything away to help someone.
Yeah.
Right? Which is why you have a wife. Because this prior to
Balance.
Tanique, you know, I
Balance.
gave everything away to help people. And so
Well, and that being said, I think that's true. Like knowing you and being an interview in this setting, I have the privilege of knowing you.
right.
Right. So I know the backstory.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, have come up, and it's been a little bit messy, just to be honest, right, is that, well, you got to let go of the past and give it to God, right? And I want to ask you this question. I wrote this down. It says, let go of the past and give it to God and move on versus confronting the past head on and giving yourself permission to feel and relieve the pain. Process what those two things mean to you.
My journey in faith was one of watching Dad, right, as this good pastor, as this phenomenal pastor.
Wow.
Watching him, lead just hundreds of people to the altar, right?
You saw that?
Oh yeah. Dad would get up and he would just start singing at the cross, and people would just start coming up and they'd be weeping. And I was a part of that. and seeing that as a kid, but I always saw that, admired it. And going from that to just experiencing the horrors that we
Now,
experience.
I have no memory of that guy.
Right.
The guy you're speaking of.
Right.
And before we go into it, for me, tell me a little bit of that guy.
He was like Thor, like Iron Man, like...
That's how you saw him.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So speak more on that.
Just to like for the kids these days. Although I grew up reading comics, right? So, for me, but he was my hero. I wanted to be just like him. I would wear suits for photo shoots because as soon as I heard there was a photo taken, I'd run and put a suit on because I wanted to be like Dad. And not because I wanted the prestige that he had, because Dad was so popular. People just knew him. We would be driving down the street and he would see a wedding. He'd pull over and we'd get ushered into the wedding. This is no invite. And get seated at one of the head tables
Because of him?
And we're there in our street, like regular everyday clothes. No one's dressed for a wedding.
Wow.
But just because of him and his popularity and his charisma, Dad had always commanded this presence around people.
You see, Joel, that's a perspective that I never realized because I grew up with I never saw that.
Right. Right.
So I've heard of the legend.
Right.
Right. And even I did an interview with Mom. Right. And one of the things that I did with Mom, and I'm speaking to the audience, right? If you go back and you watch the episode Conversation with Mom, you'll see that one of the things I had to do, because Dad was so polarizing, that what we've experienced can overtake this interview and we never get to talk about Joel because there's so much that went on. Yeah. And one of the things I had to do, it was very hard, was to not push aside that stuff, but to talk about it in generalization, that we don't miss you. And in that experience, Joel Ramjan, seeing Dad as this superhero, right? Seeing him as this great man. And for full context, my dad was a pastor that fell and left the church and was chastised, and and we'll get into more of that. But did you know when Dad left the church? Did you know what was going on, or did they hide that from you?
We knew what was going on because we were in the house.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? Well, we saw, I was very sick as a child.
Yeah.
Right? So I'd be home.
Now, why were you sick?
I had rheumatic heart disease. No, I developed it around 5, but I had a severe case of it. And so my memories were always about hospitals, right? And looking up at the ceiling tiles and counting them. And those were my memories of being lonely, being alone in the hospital
room.
I went from looking at Dad as a hero, going back to that question, to looking at to being absolutely terrified of him.
Wow.
So at an early age, I stopped praying to God.
Really?
Oh yeah. I couldn't connect with God the Father. I started just praying to Jesus, and I would call out to Jesus. I would pray.
But where did that come from?
It came from a Bible story of the prophet that was being teased by the kids for being called baldhead, and the bears came out and
I know why that resonated. Now, that for the things that we were not present in the room for and the things that we didn't witness, I salute you. Thank you. Yeah, no, I salute you because you got to remember there's so many different perspectives in family dynamic, right? And to think of, I didn't have a letdown. I only knew what I knew.
Right.
I knew the violent.
Right.
I didn't see the superhero.
Right.
I didn't see the superhero fall.
Yeah.
To think what that would do to a child and the perspective coming from, we're processing this as adults.
Yeah.
But could you imagine if Joel was in the room sitting here, what that might have been, 10-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, right? So why I say thank you and why I say we salute you is that sometimes families, they can disconnect with another sibling because that wasn't their experience.
Yeah.
And sometimes it invalidates their experience. Also, they're afraid to talk about their experience because somebody else didn't have the same experience. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's important for me, not just for you, but for every one of my siblings to know that all our experiences are different, they're unique, and we validate them. I validate them. Do you think in that time, the weight of the violence overshadows the memories of pure, genuine moments that might have occurred? Like they're there, but the weight of that trauma.
I don't have good memories in the sense of when things really descended. I just have black. I know things happen. There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score that I read, and it just blew my mind.
Yeah.
But you know, but the memories that I do keep, like I remember standing watching Dad building a church. Like I was at the construction site. I just went back to Trinidad in January last year.
Yeah.
And I went back to that city, went and saw the church, still standing, still flourishing.
The legend of Pops.
The legend of Pops, right? No one knew what happened to him other than he was the one that built the church.
Right.
And so it's, for me, it's a bit, it's a bit surreal because I don't,
different people.
and you know, I think the hardest part of that time for me was loneliness. Because
6 brothers.
right. So lots of siblings.
Yeah.
I was always the one that wanted to help, right?
Yeah.
Like I wanted to do. It was I watched Mom. So Mom is a very hospitable person.
Right.
I get that hospitality from her. I watched Mom, open up the home for visiting pastors and dignitaries that would come to our home to meet with Dad, and she would make their favorite dishes. I remember our home being a home of peace and joy and beauty, laughter.
I don't know.
I used to sneak around the corner and peek and watch, Mom and Dad sitting and watching TV around the corner. When Dad descended, all of that ended. We even lost the TV. We had nothing. The church abandoned us.
Do you remember when he left? When he walked out of
I remembered when he left, and I remembered it was also during a very difficult time because Mom was pregnant with Liz, our youngest, and she was hospitalized because of the situation with Dad.
So what about you? Your father just walked out on you.
We had one of his brothers and his wife move in with us, into the house, and he was kind, and he was very kind, but he also had the same discipline background. And so
everything has to be in order.
I would never forget, like, his forms of discipline was lift us by the scruff of our...
Right.
Yeah. And other forms of discipline that I would never do to a human being. Never.
Right.
And so we went from the house being void of Mom and Dad to now
a new entity
in the home. We're having to go to school. I'm having to help get you guys. It was just a dark time.
That was
really dark time.
That was really interesting for me. Just getting that, because you kind of just filled in areas that I had like, this is not part of my memory.
Yeah.
And it's just good to understand that. Now, when Dad left, right, and it was just Mom and the rest of us, for me, it was freeing.
Right.
And I told Mom on the last episode, I felt...
joy came back to the home.
I had nothing. I went from Dad presence in the violence to his presence not being there.
Right.
Running around.
Right.
Outside.
Right.
We played in the sewers.
Right.
Like, we played in the sewers.
Well, Mom couldn't watch us, and it was 6 boys, And so basically, we would eat, and she'd open the door, and we'd go, and then we'd come back when we're hungry.
Right. But then from time to time, Pops would come, and this is what's interesting. And you is someone that you're kind of different from the rest of us in this aspect, where you're always been someone your whole life, you until this day. Your mouth will get you into trouble because you say when you say it the way you see it, but not not in a way that's rude and disrespectful. But when you see injustices, you just say it out loud.
Right.
And I remember when Dad would come, we would all be so happy because he would come to pick us up to take us somewhere.
Right.
But you would refuse to go out of everybody. And then Dad would make the rest of us point at you and he would tease you, calling you names, teasing you. Yeah. Then you talked about earlier in the Bible story, what stuck with you was a story of somebody being teased in the Bible. Was that something that resonated with you because it connected with your own story? Or
it didn't. I think the part with being, I shut down and stopped talking to Dad. So I basically
resented him.
More than just, I was terrified. I saw things when you guys were in school,
right,
that I cannot get out of my mind.
Right. Even till this day.
It's part of my ongoing nightmare.
Right.
And then we were left exposed to be abused by others.
Right.
Wow. And so, I mean, when you look at, we were vulnerable, and those within the church that should come around and help took advantage.
You know, you didn't watch Mom's episode last week, right?
No, I haven't. I don't want to see it.
It's so interesting that you're saying this because you're saying the same thing. And if you haven't seen, again, last week's episode with Conversation with Mom, I implore you, it's a must watch because you haven't seen that episode. And I asked Mom the single greatest thing out of that experience. And she said the church missed an opportunity.
Yeah.
For a broken family, a broken woman.
Yeah.
And they called us the little devils.
And we weren't broken. We were not broken.
Explain that.
We were victims. We were not broken. We look at those going through things like that, and we get labeled with this term as if you are broken. And we lived it. Inside, we lived it. But journeying with Daisy had helped me to see that I wasn't broken. I was victimized, and I was victimized not just by my dad,
right,
but also by the church.
Wow.
It helped me with truth to change the perspective in my mind, to go from I am unworthy to I am worthy. Wow. These things happened to me. It happened, but it's not me. But I lived up until I was 48 years old with
guilty as charged.
This is who I am.
Guilty as charged.
Right? Not
imposter
this
syndrome.
Happened to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow. Joel, one of the things we talked about, and to give the audience full context, right? My dad, because Joel stood up and would not go with Dad when he came to pick us up, he stayed with Mom. And my dad would make all of us kids point at him and call him the most horrible names. He teased them. And one day I went to Joel to apologize, as an adult, like about a year or two ago, to apologize. And he was like, Paul, you were a kid. But there's something I didn't tell you, right? You were right, 100%. You were right. I was a kid. But I never told you how I processed it. And going through therapy and bringing up these old feelings, it really came back to me what was going through my mind at that time. And what went through my mind at that time, as I'm pointing and teasing you, was envy of your bravery. You're going to have to take the next question because I can't.
Sorry.
Yeah. No.
But context with that was, context with that was Dad used those moments. We were left absolutely poor.
Right.
Mom was a stay-at-home mom. Now, Mom, if you look at her interview, she's brilliant.
Yeah.
She's a brilliant nurse, trained in England. Right. In Trinidad and Tobago. But she left it all for us. And the church literally cut us off.
Yeah.
And so dad left, and there were times we were left with no food. Like I remember mom taking flour because there's nothing else in the cabinet. And she's burning the flour, like toasting it in a pan to make porridge with it for us so that we could have something in our stomachs to go to school.
Yeah.
Time and again, God would send people to bring us stuff. And they would tell mom, I was at the grocery store and I just felt like I should bring it. And it was, well, we had nothing. But dad would show up in a Mercedes. Now, my dad, when we say he was a polarizing figure, and so dad would show up in his Mercedes and say, everyone come.
Yeah.
And he held out $100 bills.
Yeah.
Right. I knew that you guys were going to come back with money for mom. As soon as they came back, they handed mom the money. You didn't know that.
No.
I didn't resent you guys because you guys were going. I looked at myself as weak. I didn't have the strength or the power to go. I was terrified of that. And I felt safety with mom and safety with being whole.
So you didn't go out of fear?
I didn't go out of fear. I didn't go because home was safe. Anywhere away from him was safe.
And I saw you as a, what's the word when somebody stand up against the power and
right, that you are fighting the power. I wasn't an avenger.
Yeah, that's how I saw you.
No, I was a kid.
And even though dad tried to label you as something else and we laughed,
I went internal. And yes, the words hurt. Yes, the labels hurt.
Right.
But I went into my safe space mentally. So nothing other short of picking me up and throwing me in the car would have gotten me in the car. And there was one time he got me in the car, and I'll never forget it. He took us to the house and we were swimming. Dad took me and threw me in the deep.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
Wow.
I sank like a rock.
But that's crazy thinking of the different perspectives.
Yeah.
How you saw yourself, and then now for the first time I'm putting myself in your perspective.
Yeah.
Wow. You saw this person and you're like, no. And here I am thinking, I've never seen anybody told him no in my whole life.
Right.
But here you are. No.
Oh, I grew a good habit of telling. Well, I just didn't talk to him.
Yeah.
Up until
where my codependency began.
Right.
Because of him.
Right.
Because of him is where my codependency. It just transferred to different people and different situations throughout my life. But that's where it began, and I learned through therapy. Yeah. Now, do you think he was battling something? Do you think there was a spiritual side of him that was connected to God, but there was maybe trauma and things in his own life that he battled with? Because he did, this same person we talked about that was a hero, then in your story as a hero, as you described him, and then this violent person, right? Then here he is coming back crying. Yeah. Something was going on. What was your perspective?
I'll ask you this, because we know how the story ended with that, right? I'll ask you this. In your life, when you have found that you've hurt, wounded others, and you've realized it,
right,
and they're still in your life, what have you done?
Oh my gosh. Apologize, change, go to therapy, try to take them out, everything in my power to mend.
Right.
And I remember his own brother told me one thing when he came to Christ. He said, if it takes him to his last breath to treat his wife as a queen, he will spend the rest of his life treating her like a queen to make up for what he did.
Right.
So to answer your question, I get where you're going.
Yeah. Dad, in that moment, it was, looking back, it was just part of his strategy of manipulation. Mom took him back, and we went on a journey to move to America.
When that was going on, were you hopeful?
No.
Did you not trust him?
No, Mom should have left him a long time ago. Mom should have reported him.
And did you feel that way at that time?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So there was never a moment in getting to know you, Joel, when Dad came back and we're getting ready to come to America, and I'm like googly eyed and super happy. Through your eyes, you were not.
I just knew that this was not going to end well.
Did you see signs, red flags, or what?
Yeah, he never repented. Now he repented to Mom, but are we human?
He never, even until his death, he never asked for us, to forgive.
When I spoke to Dad, we were going to, his hospital parties. I was driving him to a hospital party. And in the car, I said to him, I was in my early 20s, and I said, Dad, I just want you to know that I forgive you for everything that's happened. I want a relationship with you. And it's not been easy, but this was me stepping out to open up
like a olive
branch, right? Because up until then, I didn't talk to Dad other than what was necessary for life. I put the olive branch. He turned to me, his eyes, and I'm driving, eyes red as it always was, and he said, "That never happened, boy. I don't know why your mother keep putting that stuff into your head. Those things never happen. You boys." And I'm driving, and and then he shut down.
Wow.
Completely and totally took the opportunity that I was giving him, and it's kept in his denial.
It's crazy how so much of your story is tying into Mom's interview, and that you haven't watched Mom's interview.
I haven't.
And he was blaming Mom for your, she put it in your head.
Right.
That's crazy.
Right.
So we moved from Trinidad, right? And here we are. We went to New York, we came to Florida, and we're in Miami. What was Miami for you? It's a lot. But if you can sum up,
Miami was out of the pot,
high school
into the fire.
High school.
Well, I started Miami in middle school.
Oh, wow.
Right? We started Miami living across from my mom. Right? We started Miami with Mom's entire family here, and still feeling like we're outsiders. Still feeling like...
Was there a particular moment that stand out to you, or is it just a feeling of...
There are moments, I don't want to bring them up.
Okay.
Because I love my uncles and aunts on both sides.
Right.
And it's a complicated situation where they don't have the whole story. They don't know what's going on. But it really took a stranger outside of our family to notice what was going on in my life and reach out to me.
Did you feel that they sort of judged, or that you were judged?
Completely judged, completely overlooked. I mean, the signs were there. Yeah. The bruises were there. Yeah. The yelling, the screaming were 2 houses away. The cursing was there.
Yeah.
To even pull us aside and say, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
Right? Like, we would get picked up to go and watch movies, or, and so we just kept our mask on, right? Hoping that someone would just ask a question.
Yeah.
Having no clue what we went through.
Yeah.
I remember when we were going to get a haircut, and this is in Miami. So Miami, out of the pot into the fire.
Right.
I've seen 2 gun murders right in front of me.
Yeah.
Brutal beatings.
Yeah.
Brutal beatings. And faculty that was just, they didn't care. One bit.
Oh yeah.
Did not care. Right.
I remember those days.
And we were going to my friend's house to get a haircut, and this guy pulls up in a car with his friends. He mistook one of our friends for someone else, pulls out a gun, and just empties the gun at us. I froze inside. Mark and Steven froze, and my friend behind me got hit in the shoulder, and the bullet lodged in his head, and he died 2 weeks later. I was frozen watching Mark with his finger in his ear, stopping the bleeding. I remember Guillermo. I remember his face. I remember his mom in the hospital. But I think the hardest part for us was not getting any of our relatives coming to us and saying, "Are you okay?" This was on the news. We were judged as though we were gangsters, and we were, when I was in school. I was in high school. I was doing both high school courses and college courses.
Right. Right. You and Stephen, brilliant. Brilliant.
But they looked at us as though we were garbage.
Yeah. Is that how you felt?
That's how we felt.
Yeah.
I remember watching my other cousins get loads and loads of gifts and love and accolades, and we're there. It's Christmas again. I have a dear uncle who would always get us brood or other things, but he got us what we needed.
Right. And essentials. And I remember those. And to me, the thing is, when I got those things too, I just felt that was what I deserved.
Right.
I
Yeah.
never felt.
Yeah. We were happy for it.
Right. I look back now because I never thought I deserved.
Yeah.
I remember the feeling we felt when one of our uncles got us a Nintendo.
Uncle David.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, what just happened?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
literally, like what just happened? A Nintendo?
Yeah.
Like, and I think they just came out at that time.
Oh, yeah. The original Nintendo.
Like the Ram John Talbot Nintendo.
Right.
I was like, what? We didn't get through. I know.
Yeah.
I relate to that.
Do you remember what Dad got us for Christmas every year?
With the blow pops was the birthday. What was remember Christmas?
It was always blow pop.
It was blow pop too. I remember blow pops being a birthday gift, like 25 cents, 10 cents at the time. I don't know. When you were in school, would you rather had been at school or at home?
No, school,
Yeah.
because that's where we were able to escape.
Yep.
Me
too.
My safe space was in the form of a rectangular slice of pizza
And the cookies.
and a cookie. That sugar cookie that
And the school lunch, their peach cobblers, their warm peach cobblers.
things that we didn't have at home, because even at home, things were still really hard, and Mom was trying her best.
Yeah. Very early, you took on work. You started working. And that's where we started. Mark was sending, sometimes he would send clothes, but I remember you like being the one to buy shoes and clothes.
That was actually in high school.
I know. That was high school.
I was in high school.
Was that Long John Silver or Top
No,
Gun?
that was Burger King was my first job.
Burger King, yes.
And then
Yes.
KFC, then Long John Silver.
Where you bought your first car. It was really cool because like one of us, you bought your car with your money. It was a little Honda Civic, I believe, a brown one, or Accord. And you used to take us to church with you and take us to youth services.
That was an ugly car.
It was an elderly car, but you took on this type of role, like where you saw our salvation as a kind of like a priority for you or important for you.
So we never left church, right? Church was always a part of our story.
Right.
Even when we came to New York, Dad came to New York to be a pastor,
Mm-hmm.
right? Of all things. And, same pretense. We're still having to now we're going from Dad, now we're going into full pretend mode.
Oh yeah.
Because
100%.
Dad was going from church to getting drunk with his brother.
Right.
The beating started back again.
Right.
And then going from New York to Miami, it really, I remember mom found this church from I think back then, the phone book. That's how we started going there. But every one of these places that we started going were places that contributed to the darkness that we were in versus bringing us out into light, right?
So with Dad almost denying everything, making you feel like your experiences didn't happen, or like did that cause you to shut down and just even bury that deeper and not talk about it?
Not just shut down, but we ended up with this persona that we were these bad
Oh yeah. Yeah, dad contributed to that too.
It's funny because I was at a conference a few years ago, and I saw one of the youth pastors that was there during that time. His name was Tito, and I'm there with Tanique, and he comes up to me and he's like, "Are you still are you still doing bad things?" And I'm sitting there like, I'm there invited to this event as a pastor, right? I've already lived life. I've already put my time in, but it just showed how people miss the mark. We were victimized.
Wow.
We were victims going to church for a reprieve, just to get away from home, to go to youth group, and to find some form of someone, some adult, some believer to just step in and say, is everything okay?
So why is Brian Silly so important to you? And who is Brian Silly?
So remember what I said, like we've had people after people come into our life. So for me personally, I have always longed for a father figure, right? That was a void in my life. And I would go to church almost every service that I could with mom, because I was her transport.
Right.
And we would go to prayer meeting and to all the different services. I wanted as much of God as I could possibly get. And I don't know why. Brian would come with his wife, and prayer was his thing. Brian was an intercessor, and he would be at every prayer meeting. And I would just watch Brian, like how he was with his wife and how he was with his daughters. And I deeply admired him to the point of almost envy, right? Like, why don't I have a dad like that?
Right.
Brian started inviting me to come to work with him. We would sit in the truck, and I'd be in Brian's truck. He delivered furniture for Carl's Furniture at the time. And he would have his Bible open on times that we would stop, and we would just unpack the Bible. He'd say, Joey, because that's what he called me. What do you think about this? And he would read something, and we would just discuss it. Brian was the reason why I read the Bible 2-3 times from cover to cover a year. I picked up that habit mainly because of his influence.
Wow.
Because of his love for, and especially with the Old Testament.
Was there in him that you saw maybe in how he was, like how he treated you, that maybe was a void that
he wanted nothing from me?
Wow.
You get this.
Wow.
All of the people in our life,
Yeah.
they want something from us. Whenever we would get a call from someone, it's because they needed something. It was never about spending time with us.
Nope.
I had sushi for the first time because of Brian. I had Thai food for the first time. He'd call me out the blue. Joey, what are you doing? Nothing. I'm coming to pick you up. Get ready. And he would pick me up. We would go to a restaurant. I had chicken milanese. Like, you remember how I said my childhood has blank spaces? Most are not blank spaces.
That's crazy.
Those are spaces in my memory that I vividly remember.
But you've reciprocated that in your own life to others.
Yeah.
And that's the blessing in it. And sometimes that void that we have, we end up becoming that for other people.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how God works in that.
Yeah.
Now, Joel, you're coming up with your 20th wedding anniversary, right?
Yeah.
And I say that to say this. So we were out there, whatever, we were in the streets, we're doing our thing. And we had, Dad built this thing in the back of the house. We call it the shed.
Right.
He built this shed. I don't know what, probably for his junk.
Right.
But I ended up taking the shed over, painting it green, calling it the greenhouse.
Yep.
And I painted it, had all my friends, had a DJ set up in there. And that's where I went to disassociate with the herbs.
Yep.
And all my friends that would come.
Yep.
And we would, and that was the spot. It was safe. It was in the backyard.
Yep.
We would drink. We would play music.
Yep.
And we buried everything in drugs and alcohol. One day I came home, heading to the shed, got my backwards, open the door. Bob Marley poster is gone. Halle Berry is gone. Halle Berry poster. All my drawings, you painted over it. There's a poster of footprints, step foot gone. There's a prayer shawl and there's a prayer rug, and there you are on the floor just praying and crying.
Yeah.
And I like, my friend Sean, my friends came over, and it was like, they have their backward. I'm like, no, really? Spoken in the front. It's like, what's good? I was like, Joel in the shed praying, and they were like, praying? What happened?
Ronnie Sankersing. Of course, buy a pound, smoke a pound. It was just literally to medicate. At that time,
Right.
there was, I witnessed sexual abuse at the church. And so I wanted nothing to do with church. Absolutely nothing. At that point, I was done. I wanted nothing. And so I literally became one of your homies. In the shed.
Every day, day in and day out.
I was making great money. So I also became your supplier. I wasn't Ronnie's friend. I was friends with his sisters, and we were in middle school together all the way through high school. And Ronnie was they were not believers at all. But one day I get a call and he said, "Hey, this is Ronnie. You might not remember me, but I just felt like I needed to call you. What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm not really doing much right now." He's like, "Well, do you want to come over?" And so I go over to his house to play chess, and he began to tell me his story of how he went to the military and he met the Lord.
Oh, wow.
And he was praying that morning, and God impressed upon his heart to reach out to Joel Ramjohn.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, when I tell you how the gulf between us are so, he was 2 grades ahead of me, right? So he was already out of high school. I've only known of him through his sister saying, "Oh, my brother's in the army."
Right.
Knew nothing of him. And he began to witness to me. And so that day I went home and I was just chewing on it, spoke to Smith, just like, what is, I was just blown away. Mom comes into the shed after I get home and she said, "Your aunt's on the phone. Auntie Joy has never called me, ever." And she said, "Joel, I called because I really, oh my word, this is so good. Thanks, Luke.
He's so talented.
So I love flat whites, and he makes the most amazing in the flat white. That's my safe spot." She said, "I was praying and I really felt like you need to be in church on Sunday." This is Friday. And so I was like, "Okay, God, I get it. And so that Sunday, I went to my uncle's church, and I was there until I met Tanique.
Was that a moment where you because you made a switch?
Oh yeah.
You made like,
yep. I gave everything up.
It wasn't like
smoking.
It wasn't like a
nope. In that moment, I'm the type of, I'm black and white. If you get to know me, you're gonna know I'm all in or I'm not.
Yes.
I am
black and white.
For justice or I'm not for justice. Yeah. I'm for God or I'm not for God.
We were talking about that before we started recording. But your whole life.
Right.
You didn't, and you tied that back to your story. You didn't go with that.
Right.
You even if it went against the grain to your own detriment because you were being teased.
Yeah.
But you were there was no like in between.
Right.
But yeah. So it's true. You did make that switch, and then you met Tanique. And you met Tanique was like married in a month.
Well, it's not quite a month. I met her mom, and she was doing her mama cherry thing. So I, being Mr. Run from every prophet, and so I basically sat on my hands. I'm not going up. Even though I felt tugged to go up, I'm like, I'm not going up. And everything ended. I'm helping to clean up, and she walks up to me and she introduced herself and said, I have a word for you. And she began to pray for me. She said, "Can I pray for you?" Back then I was, college guy. I said, sure. She began to pray for me. And while she's praying, she said, there's something that you've wanted to start that you couldn't, that there was always roadblocks. God says now is the time.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 weeks later, Agape Source was started.
Wow.
But this was started back then, and I had a heart. I was already making good money doing web design, graphic design for Norwegian Cruise Line. I worked at Canard Cruise Line. And so I wanted to help churches and nonprofits and just businesses with Christian businesses with graphic design or web design. And I would just charge them the cost, but they got my services for free.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I met Tanique. Because a few months later, Tanique calls me out of the blue and says, hey, my mom told me about you. And we're doing a coffee cafe poetry night at our church. And I want flyers to pass out at the local university. So I went to her house to meet her, to talk about the project. I wanted nothing to do with women or relationships. I was running. I had aunts that were trying to set me up and hook me up. And
Right.
I just didn't want a relationship. I didn't feel like I could love anyone
Mm-hmm.
and that I could be loved unconditionally. I went to meet with Tanique and we talked for the most of the time about missions and just, her heart for people, her heart for caring for others.
Right.
And I was just blown away by this girl
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't thinking about makeup and hair. Everyone only was self-absorbed. All she talked about was God and what he's done in her life and how she wanted to just impact other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got engaged 3 months later, married 3 months after
When
that.
you know.
And when and we moved away.
But when you knew, you knew, and it was a beautiful wedding. And when you describe like Tanique, I do see that the hearts.
Yeah.
That's one of the things you see, like the hearts for people.
Uh-huh.
The heart that I think you've always had.
Mhm.
You've always had every stage of your life, even when you were out of the church or not doing churchy things.
Yeah.
You still had a heart for people because you still looked out for us.
Yeah.
Whether you were taking us to church or being our supplier,
Right.
you were still looking out.
Yeah.
But when you and Tanique had your first child,
Mm-hmm.
Micah, and knowing your story, especially your personal Joel Ramjan relationship with his dad,
Mm-hmm.
what was it like having your first son? That feeling when Micah was born.
I would give my life for this child.
Is that a feeling?
That feeling first of all, when I knew Tanique was pregnant, it was, I think that day, the greatest day of my life. We had just gotten to China. It's only 2 weeks in the country.
Mm-hmm.
We're not speaking the language at all.
Right.
And Tanique is like, hey, I don't know, I'm vomiting. I think I need a pregnancy test. And so I get to this pharmacy,
Right.
and I go in, and everything is in Chinese. It's not your CVS or your Walgreens.
Wow.
And I'm running around. I cannot find it. There is this excitement of knowing inside of me,
Mm-hmm.
while at the same token, I cannot find this doggone test. We were the only people of color, right? So I stood out. As I'm running around and I'm saying, I knew some words. So I'm saying, woda tai tai, woda, wabuja da, wabuja, zai da. And then people started coming up to
Right.
the front of the store because it's not doors.
Right.
They open the store.
Right.
So it's open to the whole street. And I'm making a commotion. I'm a loud person.
Mm.
And so I'm making a commotion and people are running around the store from the street. And then finally I go, what a tight tot. Where? What? This old lady was like, she runs to the back and she comes back with a pregnancy test. And so that's how we found out.
And then
She was pregnant with Micah.
and what was that? When that she showed you, yes. Do you remember the?
Yeah, I've been like that ever since. When it comes to my kids, that excitement, that investment.
Well, now you have two boys. You have Luke. You have Micah. Luke brought us the coffee.
Yes.
What is fatherhood? What does that mean to you?
Fatherhood is everything to me, not what I do. So what I do vocationally, the things I build that they could say, well, Joel did this, mean nothing to me. Fatherhood is everything to me.
Does that come back from Trinidad? Is that where that comes from? That comes from?
It comes from who I've discovered God to be.
Explain that a little.
So my view of God was so skewed because of Dad. But when I began to understand God's true heart, his Father's heart for me, and his Father's heart for his people, and his Father's heart for his Son that he had to give for all of us, but that he still in love had everything under control, it helped me to see who he truly was as a father, and I wanting to be like that. That it's truly helped bring, I think, all things full circle to me. So it doesn't matter what my earthly father did. It didn't matter how he went. I was already at peace with my heavenly Father and his example and his heart for even my dad.
When you look at that and how you see God, and one of the things is, and it's hard to do on an interview like this, being tied to the story as an interviewer, because being in the pit with you guys, to stay focused on the people that I'm interviewing, because I want to get to know your story, right? One of the things that I observed and I heard was the pain through the trials, that the connection of the church. But I just asked you, the importance of being a great father, the importance of fatherhood to you outweighs everything. Outweighs everything. The question I want to ask, though, is you didn't connect it to your pain, you connected it to God. How, for people listening, anyone that will not step foot in the church, whether it's through hurt or what they've seen, how do you articulate that to somebody who say, I will never step foot in the church because
the church as an institution failed me. The church as individuals, the living embodiment of what God intended for the church to be, through Brian Seeley, through Ronnie Sankersing,
least expect,
through others like that, that was the church for me. They were the body of Christ.
You sure you didn't watch Mom's episode?
No.
You guys literally brought the same exact overall message to, I gave Mom the same question. And she basically said to people, when I had to speak to people, was like, you will find God in the people around you, and it will be the people you least expect.
Yeah. I'll never forget Rama. Rama was
Auntie Rama.
Auntie Rama. She was
Hindu.
She was Hindu.
Oh my gosh. She almost took a beating from Mom.
Yeah.
Sorry. I know we weren't going to go there.
Yeah. I'll go there. We're just pointing out that God used this woman.
Yeah.
Right? The compassion that he places in all of us. Right? And so for me personally, it has always been the people in my life. I don't look at any of the people in my past with any bitterness or anger or hate. I look at some of them with pity, in that they blew it. They lost an opportunity to be a part of our story. They lost an opportunity to get to know us, to really we were cool kids.
Wow.
Had they have gotten to know us back then, it would have prevented us from having to self-medicate on marijuana and all of these things.
Sure.
Right?
I'm sure.
It would have. Because we were self-medicating from the pain. We had no outlet.
We found those connections in unhealthy people because there was nobody coming into our environment
Right.
to show us healthy.
Now, God was gracious to us. And so for me, when I tell someone, that does not want to step in a church, I was the same way. As I began to study all of these different religions, everything wanted something from me. And I was sick of things wanted something from me.
Wow.
I was tired of it.
Wow.
Jesus was the only thing that was saying, I want nothing from you. I just want you.
Yeah.
I just want to know you.
Yeah.
I want to spend time with you. I want you to know me.
Yeah.
I want you to connect with me.
Nothing else matters.
Nothing else matters. And guess what? You don't have to go to church.
Yeah.
You can have me right here in your room. So the best times I had with the Lord was in my room, in my car, not in church. When I started going to church, what was the first thing? Oh, Joel, web design.
Yeah.
You're great with kids. Right? Immediately, I went from not even getting a seat. We should have been, the church I go to now, Renault is the pastor. When we were coming out of China, he said to Tanique and I, you guys have been overseas for years. I want you, when you come here, I do not want you volunteering for anything. For the next few years,
Yes.
I want you guys to come in and I want you to find a seat and I want you to just get poured into.
Yeah.
That's what he said to me
yeah.
and to Tariq.
That was different.
That was so mind-blowingly different.
Wow.
Because I came from the shed,
Right.
right? From the smoke and because of our codependence, the moment we got asked, I just said, yes, sure, whatever you need.
Yeah.
And I just started doing, and then they were like, oh, you're good at this? Do this too. Sure, whatever you need. And so my time at church went from what would have just been a couple hours and off home to Sabbath was all before it started, the service, and then all day long.
Wow. Well, Joel, so you are somebody, you love sci-fi, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to present you with this one last question, right? You leave this interview, right? Get on a plane, you're going on a trip. Somehow the plane goes through a porthole and then you don't know where, it just shakes and you look over and you're sitting right next to Joel Ramjan leaving Trinidad, sitting right next to you. What happens? Are you talking to him or is he talking to you?
I would ask him if I could get half of the pone in his pocket.
He had pone in his pocket?
Yes, sir.
What is he going to tell you? Is he giving it to Sherry?
Yeah, oh yeah. Hands down.
And what are you going to say if he hands you that pone?
I was always tender-hearted.
He hands you the pone.
He hands me the pone. And I'm going to tell him it's going to be okay. I'm going to tell him that he could trust God, for one. And for two, well, I'll actually give him a whole bunch of stay away from this one. Stay away from that one. Pen and paper. Now, the Joel on the plane, right, would have had pen, paper.
The Joel on the plane, the adult Joel or the Joel from Trinidad?
Both of us. Well, always equipped. Always ready. Right? He would have had an itinerary with it. Right? Because that's me. And I would say, okay, pull out your pen, paper itinerary. I want you to take some note. Right? Continue your love for reading. Continue your love. But more than anything else, continue your love for the Lord.
Is that advice you're giving him? Are you giving him that advice?
Oh yeah, no, I sidetracked. Sorry. He wasn't ready for that.
He was too young.
Too young. Wasn't ready. But for
is he getting a hug?
Yeah. We never got hugs. I don't.
Is he gonna think that's weird?
Yeah, you would think that's weird, but he would accept it. And I would tell him, you're gonna meet a lady named Daisy when you're almost 50, but whatever you do, make sure you set the appointment. Yeah,
that's beautiful. Daisy is our therapist.
Yeah,
and you're telling him don't stop.
Now I'm tempted just out of transparency, and Daisy, if you're going to see this, I'm actually tempted to stop.
Really?
Yeah. I've been avoiding the other side that I need to dig into.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go there. But I know I have to. I know I have to break ground.
And the importance for anyone watching this, again, why dig up? I'm doing fine. I'm paying my bills. I'm paying my mortgage. Why would I want to dig that?
Truth.
Why would you want to dig it up?
Truth. You know, there's a saying, know God and make him known, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we apply that to our lives, know Paul, right? So that I could, right? So for you, know Paul, so the world can know Paul, right? My friends don't know me. Many of you are going to see this for the first time. Well, you wouldn't, I don't know, but you might see this,
Right.
right? And if you do, you're going to get a 1-hour snippet into my life.
I would say continue. I would say continue with Daisy. And I would say continue on your healing journey. It's difficult. Like, it's hard, it's painful, it's pressure. But what I have gained out of it so far, we're sitting here. You're looking at it.
Yeah.
You're looking at the result of something you started because you've been a disruptor. You call it like you see it. You rip the band-aid off, and because you did that, we're having this podcast.
Wow.
And it's mirroring back to you, pouring back into you what you started, saying don't stop.
Yeah.
So Joel,
and it's for all of these guys.
Yeah.
You know how much we all do. We love our nieces and nephews.
Yeah. Well, Joel, it has been, I would say, a speechless interview. I'm speechless because we just had a few show notes and we just kind of let God lead. So again, thank you for being a guest.
Brother, love you.
Oh, how you feel? Keep it rolling, Caleb. Keep it rolling.
Yeah, or I'll start shaking.
Yeah.
You know, she has a dog.
Yeah.
Rosie,
love you.
And Rosie is so precious. Like yesterday she came in, not yesterday, Thursday came in, cuddled up with me. But you have to fulfill your part of the bargain for me doing this. So.
I made a deal that I told Judge if he do this with me, we would do one of our sessions together.
Yep. Oh yeah. So next session, I think we'll unpack this with Daisy.
It's crazy. It's crazy when you watch moms, how much of you and mom tied together.
Really?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's probably a good thing you didn't watch it.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm like...
And that rabbit hole goes deep. Like, there's so much to this story.
One of the things I told Mom, and I think there might be a time, and it may be years in advance, where we may have a sit down and have a conversation. But the cool thing is, being a patient, I was telling Mom, I said, Mom, I'm not a doctor. If you go, I'm not going to be able to help. But what I could do is we could structure the program in a way that we can get to know you.
Right.
You know, and you see how heavy it is getting to know you, but Dad being such an integral part of it.
Yeah.
That I had to keep focusing it back on Joel.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Dad can take over, and then your identity get lost again.
Yeah.
My identity, Mom identity get lost.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think will come out of this is as we're walking into our identity, the greater our identity will become prevalent, and the less power those experiences will have.
Right. Yeah.
The more we talk about it, the more we go to therapy, the more we get free from it, and the healing it brings to families out there. I think it's good. And this is some good coffee.
Yes, it is. My word.
Oh my goodness.
He has a gift.
Joel, that was good. That was just sick. That was good.
In the world.
Really? Gentlemen, this is Luke. He makes the best coffees.
How's that? Oh. He has his smiley face.
Oh, I wish I could show that.
But it's, maybe in post. You
That's a great idea.